Hi friends, this is Laura with Potpourri of Life. I want to talk to you about Lyme disease, and I am going to start this series over again. I did a couple this past summer, and I had so much going on, and part of the problem with people who have Lyme disease, we get distracted, and when we have something big going on, we kind of have to prioritize what's most important in order to survive every day. Now, yes, I have most of it under control. But one thing I have noticed, and I was telling my husband this morning, I said, I think I know what's wrong. And he goes, what? I said, my Lyme disease is coming back strong because I've been having symptoms. And what kind of symptoms? There's a whole slew of symptoms, and I want to show you. This page here was what I worked with when I was first diagnosed. It is a slew of symptoms that correlate with Lyme disease. And part of the problem with Lyme disease symptoms, it's really hard to diagnose. And so I really feel bad for the physicians, but what I really get upset about, and I experience this, so I feel really bad for patients, is you go in and they kind of like, well, there's nothing wrong with you, because test after test after test tells them that you're fine. There is nothing wrong with you. Then, okay, why do I get the headaches? Why am I fatigued? Why do I have the bone pain? Why do I have this? And, you go in, you can only talk about 2 or 3 topics at a time. So you're constantly feeding their income while you're getting sicker. So finally, when this doctor took a look at all the tests I had done, I had heart tests done, blood tests done, all sorts of stuff. I even had a Lyme test done, but he ended up sending mine to another lab because they do more testing, and it came back that I was CDC actually diagnosed for Lyme, which meant that he could actually work with me. Sadly, and I really fought him on this in terms of, I don't want to be on antibiotics. He goes, I've got to put you on a ton. And you know what? He's right in terms of we had to get it kicked under the curb, at least to some point, until we could do some more holistic measures. But he's not a holistic doctor. He does support it, but that's not his specialty. So for years I've been dealing with this, and then more so lately I've been doing really well on my home treatment. But there is another health concern that I've been dealing with, and I keep having to go on medication, and then finally I've got that under control, I think. So I haven't had to be on antibiotics for that particular thing. The treatment for Lyme disease is antibiotics. And so for the past month, a lot of symptoms are returning. And the egg allergy I do have an egg allergy, but usually farm fresh eggs I don't have a problem. But I'm reacting to the eggs, which didn't make any sense because I make their grain, I make their feed, I make sure everything they eat is healthy, so there's no yuck in it. So I didn't believe that was it, but it didn't connect. And then the headaches and the stiff neck that I'm getting, every morning, every night, I am in so much pain. And it's hard. I'm taking the turmeric and I can get it relieved and stuff. But before I go on a little bit about Lyme disease and some symptoms, and it's not going to be long because I'm going to just do it in segments because I want you to get a gist of what's going on. One of the things I read today, and it broke my heart. So there's a jury that awards $6.5 million to a Maine family for wrongful death and negligent misdiagnoses. So in Portland, Maine, a Cumberland County jury on this past Wednesday, reportedly ordered Mercy Hospital in Portland and one of its physicians, I won't share his name, to pay $6.5 million to the family of a man who died as the result of a misdiagnosis. According to court documents, 25-year-old went to Mercy Hospital in Portland in June 2017 for rashes, fever, chills, dizziness, headaches, potential signs of Lyme disease. That's just a handful. And that's when it really hit me. Court records show that the the doctor diagnosed the patient with a skin disorder and a virus, writing no sign of Lyme disease. You see, Lyme disease is not a virus, but it can mimic a virus too. And I think the limited testing that is done in hospitals, they don't want to use the other testing. I've gotten this from the big hospitals here near me, and I just walk away frustrated because it's not like they want. It seems like they don't want to help. Because you know what? All those tests, each additional test brings in thousands of dollars to their hospital. For the patient who wants to get well, they want to do everything possible to feel good. Let me continue. The gentleman returned to the same doctor a few weeks later, and the doctor again diagnosed him with the same skin disorder and hives. 5 days later, he was hospitalized at Maine Medical Center after feeling faint. It was then that he was correctly diagnosed with Lyme disease and Lyme carditis by a different team of physicians and died about a week later from the condition, according to the attorneys. The hospital and the doctor have been ordered to pay $6.5 million to the family as a result of the misdiagnosis. The attorney released a statement about, "We are thankful that the jury held Mercy Hospital and the doctor accountable for the needless and tragic death of a young man. His family will be grieving his loss forever. They have had some solace in knowing that justice has occurred and hope that this verdict helps to prevent this kind of negligence and wrongful death from happening to anyone else." The hospital released the following, saying, "The hospital extends its heartfelt sympathy to the patient's family and regrets the circumstances that occurred leading to his death. Mercy is in the process of evaluating next steps following the jury's verdict in this case." Folks, it shouldn't take millions of dollars to convince a healthcare system to say, we need to be on top of this. With the COVID that went out, everybody's getting. You get all kinds of care there. When this virus hit, I told my husband and I told a few others, and I even posted on one of the hospital site about some of the post-COVID symptoms people were having. I said, sadly, because you can't figure out what's wrong, you will soon treat them like long-term, what they call long-term Lyme disease patients. See, when I was finally diagnosed, because it took so long, my diagnosis is chronic persistent Lyme. I'm not sharing this for sympathy. I've been dealing with this for a long time. I've dealt with people turning their head saying, oh, there's no such thing. I've dealt with doctors saying, oh, we can't help you, but I think it's this. They didn't want to actually dig a little deeper. So am I thankful for the doctor who finally diagnosed me? Yes, I am. And I don't like being an experiment and having to go on antibiotics. But because I have been on an antibiotic for an infection I keep getting, but for the last 2 months I haven't, I realized my symptoms are returning. And why? Because antibiotics are what is used to help with Lyme patients. Now, do I want to go on antibiotics? Absolutely not. But it does tell me I need to go back to this. These are my tinctures that I make. And I've been able to cut back because I make my own supplements too. Some of these things are Japanese knotweed. Those of you who do have Lyme disease, you know what this is for. And folks, I'll go into a little bit more of this. I use olive leaf tincture, burdock root. I'm just going to share a few. Let's see. Because I don't want to say too much, because some of you might say, oh, I'm going to go get those to prevent myself from Lyme disease. You have to understand the root cause of your illness, because you might be treating your disease inaccurately. But you got kudzu. I use, it's Kudzu. I can use that for pain, which I had to start taking again. So I make a tincture because it's just easier. I take all these tinctures and I drop them in water, and I just kind of like, hopefully everything gets better. Cat's claw, some of you may be familiar with. There's one here's not labeled intentionally because unfortunately I would offend people on that one. But it's an herb. Let's see, I actually have a rosemary tincture I use. I use lemon balm too, which can be used for a variety of things. There's a bunch here. So I have to return to using these. Now, why should I be self-diagnosing myself? One of the things, and I'm not actually, one of the things that my Lyme doctor shared with me, he himself has Lyme disease, and I asked him, does it ever go away? He goes, not in your situation. He goes, we can get it at bay, but you will be dealing with it long term. It's part of who you are. It's in your system. So here's my list. Some of the many symptoms. Headache. I never got facial paralysis like Bell's palsy. I can't talk. That's another Lyme disease symptom, by the way. Tingling of nose, cheek, or face. Right now I'm doing fine there. Stiff neck, tightness, and shoulder pain. I've been dealing with this for a couple of weeks, and it's like, David, and he massages it, but it doesn't always go away. Sore throat, that just started this week. I'm like, heightened allergic sensitivities. And I shared the other day about eggs that I have an allergic reaction to it, but I found that farm fresh eggs I did fine with. Well, all of a sudden, it's like, why? And I just kind of brushed it off. It's like, okay, I need to cook my eggs a little bit further, and I still will. But it's just kind of like, that explains it. So twitching of facial or other muscles like your eye. So far I haven't gotten that back. Jaw pain and stiffness, and change in smell and taste. Sometimes the smell, but not really. So some of these I'm not bothered by. Digestive and excretory system, like upset stomach, nausea, and vomiting. Sometimes that happens. Irritable bladder, unexplained weight loss or gain, loss of appetite. So I've got loss of appetite and I've gained weight. And I'm like, but I'm eating well. So there is something going on in my system. So I have to return to this. So another thing, respiratory and circulatory symptoms, difficulty breathing, and I've been having a lot of chest pain. And I've taken the COVID test, folks. It's not that. Because I thought, well, maybe it's that. Never giving it a thought to say your Lyme disease might be activated. And reading this article broke my heart because, well, let me tell you a few more symptoms, okay? So night sweats, unexplained chills. I'm doing okay there. I was cold last night and there was no reason for it, but you get that heart palpitations. Diminish exercise tolerance. I'm exercising, I'm pushing through it, but the energy level is diminished and you get exhausted. Heart block murmur, that doesn't seem to be it. Chest pain or ribs are soreness or tight, and that's really something that I've been experiencing. Mood swings, irritability, and agitation. No, that hasn't been a problem right now, although the reverse mortgage. I'll share a little bit that later. But circumstances can cause that. It can activate it a little bit. But that's normal in life, so I'm not really concerned about that right now. Depression and anxiety. And the anxiety's been at bay, but the depression, I can see it coming in. That's why I force myself to get up in the morning. I force myself to exercise because I know how fast, even without Lyme disease, someone can succumb to living on the couch. Let's see, personality change. Fatigue, aggressive behavior, impulsive, suicidal thoughts. None of these are really my thing. Over-emotional reaction, crying easily. Maybe, but is that my personality? I don't think it's been excessive, so I'm not worried there. Disturbed sleep, too much or too little. And sometimes once or twice a week, I can't sleep. I went to bed last night. I could not sleep, and I was exhausted. So the days I don't sleep well, I wake up fatigued. And then I have days that I sleep really good, like 8 hours. Like, that's cool. Suspiciousness, paranoia, hallucinations, not really a big deal here. Feeling as though you are losing your mind, not right now. Obsessive compulsive behavior, bipolar, maniac, schizophrenic, like including hallucination. None of those apply to me. So here's some other things. Double or blurry visions. All I've noticed is that I'm starting to get the floaters again, and I haven't had those in years. So wandering or lazy eyes. I've always had a lazy eye, so this is nothing new, but my eye does not wander like my mother's did. Conjunctivitis, no. Oversensitivity to light, I have that. I've had it for a long time, and over the last month, it's gotten increasingly worse. Eye pain, yep. No swelling around my eyes. The floaters I mentioned and red eyes, but it's interesting. My mother had lazy eye, and you stop to wonder, did she have it first? Because some people say it can be passed down from your parents, but that's not what I think happened. Hearing, decreased hearing. I've got such good hearing. My husband hates it because I can hear things that are out across at the park. Ringing or buzzing in your ears, the tinnitus is heavily in sound sensitivity. It is why I don't like using my cell phone. There is something in the cell phone that just irritates my hearing, and people don't understand. I met up with a friend the other day, and she says, "Laura," I said, "I can't talk on the cell phone." And she goes, "But why?" I said, "It bothers my hearing." And it's really hard to explain to people why, because people don't understand. This is not to insult you. It's just that if you haven't experienced it or you don't know, it's hard to understand. And pain in ears, I don't have that. Joint pain with swelling and stuff like that. I've been getting some swelling, but nothing I'm worried about. I just have some pain in my back and in my shoulders and neck. So what do I do with that is I have to schedule a massage soon. Poor muscle coordination and loss of reflexes. One of the things that I'm doing is I'm using a tool my husband has to strengthen his hands. I borrowed that for another reason, but that's what I'm doing because I don't want to lose my strength in my hand, because before, if I would pick something up, I would drop it. So a lot of canned goods, crash, gone. And so I go through canning jars when I'm going through this, and it's frustrating and hard, but you know what? I've adapted in terms of how do I bring the jars up, different stuff like that. I just have to be careful when if I'm not thinking about it, I could lose my grip on a jar. Neurological, let's see, numbness in body, tingling, pinpricks. And I was just telling David the other day, I said, bugs are crawling all over me again. And no, we have no bugs in our house. And he goes, no. One of the worst symptoms I had was, right now the symptoms are all over, and clothes bother me. They bother me horribly because it just irritates my skin. So I'm very particular about what type of fabric I use. And then if they're too tight, I just can't stand it. And the worst one is wearing a bra is like, take this thing again. It's not just all females. This is just annoying. They should never invented that garment. But you still wear one because of everyday activity where you're interacting with people. So I'm going to work on a solution for that. But burning feet, for the last week, I've been asking David to massage my feet because they hurt so bad. And he can't get rid of the pain. And he actually rubs them really, really hard, putting pressure in it. I said, you're not touching the pain. And he would rub them for a long time. So I have to use some other ointments that I make, the magnesium ointment and other things like that, the comfrey ointment, any of that to relieve the pain. So fortunately, knowing my herbs and stuff has helped with some of the symptoms. It doesn't help the headache that I am dealing with right now. And I don't have horrible lighting in here. My light reflects off the ceiling, and it's hurting my eyes, and it's causing a migraine. So it's poor muscle coordination, loss of reflexes, loss of muscle tone. I went over that. The numbness in the body, burning, stabbing sensations in the body, burning feet, weakness and paralysis of limbs. I'm doing okay there. Tremors or unexplained shaking. I had it before. I'm doing okay right now. Some people deal with seizures and strokes. That hasn't been a problem. Poor balance, dizziness, difficulty walking. That's occasional. Increased motion sickness and wooziness. Like I cannot, and I got to the point where I could read in the car. I can't pick up a book and read in the car. I can't even crochet in the car, and that stinks because it's kind of like a mind thing that you can just kind of like talk and do some crochet. I can't do that. Lightheadedness and fainting. I've been getting a little bit of that. Cognitive impairment. Inflammation of the brain, inflammation of the protective membrane, inflammation of the brain and spinal cord, academic and vocational decline, difficulty with multitasking, and I used to be able to do 5-6 things at once, and that went away. And even now, even before I realized what was happening, it's been going on for a couple of years, I'll just say, Dave, I can only do one thing at a time. Whereas before, my kids used to be able to come in, my husband used to be able to come in, I used to be able to do the bookkeeping and do other things. I can't do that anymore. It's kind of like, stop. That has been the Lyme, and for the most part, even after things got better, I haven't been able to return to that massive multitasking. But I'm very intentional and I stay focused on what I'm doing. But because I just started a new course in herbal medicine, I have to be better because I want to complete this course and I am determined that I will. Difficulty with organizing and planning. Yeah. And I am a very organized person and I do plan, but it has to be a list now. It's not by memory anymore. Word finding problems. Some of you have noticed that sometimes I might not be able to capture the word. That's ongoing. I haven't been able to get that completely resolved. So now it's coming back. So you'll see in some videos I might have that. So I'm going to ask you to just please forgive me. I am human and this is a part of who I am as a person right now. Maybe I'm defective, whatever you want to call it. But as a human being with a heart for God, a heart to love and care, it's not a defect. It's just part of who I am right now. So word finding, slowed speed of processing. One of the things is, I don't have this right now. I'll be talking along and then I just stop. This drove me crazy when I went to talk to my physicians for one for this, one for that. And I would get in there and all of a sudden I would just stop talking because I couldn't figure out what was wrong. I couldn't think of the word. And that happens with people who have Lyme disease. Some other things, dementia, forgetfulness, poor school or work performance, distractibility, attention deficit, confusion, difficulty thinking, difficulty with concentration, reading, spelling, noises that distract you, disorientation, getting and feeling lost. For women, it's unexplained menstrual pain, menstrual pain and irregularity, reproduction problems, miscarriage, stillbirth, premature birth, neonatal, death, congenital Lyme disease, extreme PMS symptoms. Skin problems, skin sensitivity, breakouts, and rashes. And that's what I was getting last week after I would have the egg after I fried it. My skin, I was inflamed. It was horrible. Benign tumor-like nodules, and the rash, they call them, I can't even say the word, but it's they call it a migraines, migrans. It's a rash, and what it is, it's like a little circle and then it has a wider red circle. But not everybody gets that, and that's what's confusing for everyday people, because, well, if you didn't have that, you can't have Lyme disease. And some of these cognitive symptoms, there are some people that are diagnosed with some diseases like attention deficit, or there's a variety of them. If you look at those symptoms alone, forgetfulness, memory loss, poor school or work performance, attention deficit or distractibility, confusion, difficulty thinking. And you know what? These people who have this could be being misdiagnosed for something else and being put on medication that is the wrong medication. And that's why it is so essential to actually see a Lyme specialist. But I'm going to get to that in a minute. So unexplained fevers, I haven't had that. Flu-like symptoms, which is what I was experiencing. Symptoms seem to change and they come and go. And that's what's really confusing by it. Dysfunction of the thyroid, endo or overactive thyroid glands, liver inflammation, bladder and kidney problems. And, this list, it's huge. Now, there are some people who have been bitten by a tick and they get that 2-week antibiotic, and then everybody says you're fine. But then you have some of these attention deficit and neurological things, and you then get diagnosed for something else, and then you're on a medication that they increasingly up. And it breaks my heart because I see that, but you know what? I'm not a physician. I'm an herbalist. I'm a patient who uses herbs. And even with herbs, the same as with medications, sometimes we have to change things up. And my husband asked me, he goes, "Why did you stop taking these?" I said, "Because I was doing fine." Because that's what I would do, is I would go off for a bit. I was still taking my supplements that I make, and I can't stand swallowing pills anymore either. But you do them so that you can stay healthy, at least stay functioning. So these tinctures, I have to go back to. And am I excited about it? I'm excited for the fact that I know what's going on with my body. And I should go see my doctor, but I'm scared. I don't want to go on antibiotics again. So what do I do? And with the way the system is today, it's really hard, because you go in and then you have to do this test, this test, this test, and you know in your heart what's wrong. So this here, folks, is my binder. It's only half. This here is a huge binder of all my notes, my doctor's appointments, things that we've discussed, and all of that. So I don't know why I didn't pull this out earlier, but this article made me realize, oh my gosh, I know what's wrong. One thing I want to share with you is, because sometimes I get heart palpitations, and I haven't had them for a long time. So right now I'm catching it early, so hopefully I can take care of this before it gets too far. Is you go to the ER and they find nothing wrong with you. You can tell them that you feel like you're having a heart attack. They can do that. The problem with, if you have Lyme disease on your chart, you are dismissed. I'm hoping that this article announces to the hospitals out there that you cannot dismiss people who come in with heart disease type symptoms, because it could be this. Hey, it could be Huntington's. It could be a number of things. But because so many people have dismissed Lyme disease, we sit in a room and we're ignored. I've gone in for severe back pain. I was ignored. I won't go back to that hospital for back pain again. And of course, the second time was when COVID started, and you're just treated horribly. Do they intentionally treat you horribly? I don't know. But it doesn't make sense that if you're in an ER spending good money, to just be put in a room and say, okay, we'll get back to you. So you kind of like calm down and try to just kind of like, what I do is I kind of meditate. I close my eyes and try to get rid of this. I'm in a place where I'm trusting that they're going to come back. And they came back, and they dismissed me with a medication that did not help me. And that happened with my back as well, when they finally did the x-rays and stuff. And there's a lot of stuff going on with my back. But this is what's going on with patients who have Lyme disease. And I do want to make sure you understand the correct spelling of Lyme is Lyme. A lot of people put an S on it. No, there is no S. It's not limes. It's a singular situation with multiple issues that could be going on. And Lyme disease deals with multiple bacteriums that have entered your body. And that's what you're always fighting. So a lot of them, they're a spirochete, which is a spiral type bacterium. So what happens, and why it affects the bladder a lot, is that it kind of like screws itself into different places and hides. So the antibiotics come in and they're fighting. They're killing off whatever it can. And then if you stop, this was why I had to be on antibiotics constantly. Because if you stopped, they would multiply and come back. when I finally got diagnosed. And my doctor was just looking at the stuff, and because I was just kind of like, whatever. And he says, why are you getting all these tests? And I told him. And he says, I want to hear your symptoms. So I started listing them, and he was on the computer too, and I kind of find that rude, but he goes, I'm listening to you. Please keep telling me what's going on. So he was able to hear me as he was going through all the tests that I had done. And he goes, I know what you got. He says, but I need you to do a test. It was an expensive test, folks. It was over $1,000. I think it's more than that now. And my insurance wouldn't pay for it. Yeah, isn't that cool? The insurance will not pay for something that could make a patient better. And I think in this case, they should go after the insurance companies too, because the insurance companies do not support Lyme disease either. So fortunately, because it was CDC approved diagnoses, I was able to get the antibiotics that I needed, but a lot of people don't. And what happens is they go to the ER and they're ignored. This gentleman died due to neglect. Now, I don't like saying doctors are neglectful because I don't really believe they intentionally are. But when you just kind of like, nah, it's a skin rash, without really taking the other tests necessary, you're doing a disservice to that patient. And now you just hurt your own name. We need to be advocates for ourselves, folks, if you are a Lyme patient or if you are a family member who has somebody who potentially might have Lyme disease. You know what the other problem is? I was fortunate. My doctor was somebody who was a family care provider, so his services are covered. Most Lyme specialists, they're specialists and they work independently, and your insurance company will not pay those bills. And people are being charged $800 to $1,200 and sometimes more, depending on how long they are there talking with a specialist. And that breaks my heart. So how did I learn about all of these herbs? When I was diagnosed in 2014, and even prior to that, I had been trying to figure out how can I fix this, how can I fix that. But then when I was finally diagnosed and I read all the literature my doctor asked me to read, and trust me, when you have Lyme disease to this extent, you don't have energy for nothing. I'd slept all the time. But in doing so, when I was awake, I would just lay down on the bed and I would just read and read and read. And then I dug a little deeper. But I did go on the antibiotics because honestly, it helped. It helped a great deal. But I'm just against antibiotic use for so much because in some of the infections I've recently had, some of them weren't working effectively. So you know that antibiotic resistant, that was one thing that my other specialist said, I'm just not sure if this is what's happening. It's hard, folks, and that's the concern that a lot of doctors, when I went in for my spinal tap, they were saying, you're on too many antibiotics. I know. What am I supposed to do? I want to feel like I can live. And that's what a Lyme patient does. They want to live. They want to thrive. They want to move forward. So if you look at me today and I look fine, I feel pretty awful. There's a 4-letter word I'd like to say, but I don't like using foul language, but I do. I feel pretty crappy right now. And then when I read that, I'm just like, I need to come on and share with you folks how to understand what's going on. And when I say, a lot of times I might say, please don't judge somebody by their behavior because you might not understand what's going on. Some of the things that I used to do, because you might be distracted, you might not remember where you're supposed to go. You lose your car in the parking lot. Now it's not just Lyme disease, but you can lose your car in the parking lot. You could be driving somewhere you always go and forget where you're going. That's scary, folks. Another thing is one time we were traveling down to meet with my daughter and we stopped off so I could go to the bathroom. I came out. We were in a white car. There was a white car next to us. In that car, there was a woman in the front seat. So my mind saw human in the front seat. I was in the back seat going down anyway because it was like 4 or 5 of us driving down. I went into the back seat and I all of a sudden realized, I was in the wrong car. I scared her, she scared me, I got out, and my brother said to me, "What are you doing?" I didn't know that was part of Lyme disease. That's what happens. We don't understand what's going on with our bodies. I don't do that anymore right now because I'm being proactive and going back on these, and I may have to call and see about getting another appointment with my Lyme specialist. But I want to fight it because I don't want the antibiotics. Plus, there's so much stuff out there. You just don't know what to believe anymore in terms of there's a shortage of this, a shortage of that. Quite honestly, folks, all that distraction that's out there, one of the things that I have to do to allow my body to always be in healing mode is to take in what's essential, filter out what's not necessary, and those that are yelling and screaming and saying, "You got to do this, I ignore you. But those of you who kind of like share information for informational purposes, I kind of listen, and sometimes I have to do it in segments. It's not, like when I stutter with my words, it's not that I'm stupid. I'm highly intelligent. But what happens is I have to think things through differently than other people who have no neurological issues or Lyme disease issue or anything like that. So when I went to my Lyme specialist, when he finally was diagnosing me, I said to him, I gave up. He goes, "Why?" I said, let me see, 2008, 2007, I started complaining. And so we go 7 years, 6 to 8 years or whatever, of complaining to your doctor. And I said, nobody would say this. I said, from what you're telling me, it sounds like it's potentially that. But I gave up. And I gave up to the point because the ear ringing got so bad. The inside, it felt like my body was being eaten alive inside. I cannot explain it. You know how you feel itchy on the outside, which is what I'm recently been dealing with? It was inside my body. I felt like there was nothing I could do. I thought I was going to die. And I told him, I said, I don't think I have much time left to live. And he goes, we are going to get you better. So he got the result. He had me back in the office. Unfortunately, I was already his patient, so he was able to get me right in. And so I was on my journey for healing. Now, some people, if you just get bit, you might be able to heal. But from what I've seen of people who have been bit by a tick and they go on that 2 to 4 week treatment, a few years later, I'm seeing stuff that people don't understand and they're getting misdiagnosed, and it's breaking my heart. Because you know what? I'm not a physician. I can recommend maybe you might want to talk to so-and-so about this. But, even my specialist will be retiring soon. He doesn't have the space for new patients much. So the other doctor that I know that's in our area is a private practice physician and doesn't take insurance. There's a huge problem in our healthcare system, and that is when we cannot reimburse our physicians for their time appropriately. When we can't have a doctor care enough so that they don't die. People don't want to die, they give up. It's not depression when it comes to this. When I was telling my doctor, it wasn't depression. I just said, I'm done, I'm tired. But now, right now, folks, because I'm aware of what's going on, I'm like, okay, I know what's going on. I'm going to start being proactive, see if I can take care of this before it gets worse. And I might have to go back to see him, but I'm praying not, because I want to use the herbs. And I'm growing some new ones, and I'm really excited about that. And there's some other things I'm excited about. And that's the cool thing about somebody who believes in nature and about taking care of one's body. The healthcare system might not be able to help me, more so when this physician retires. I do know that my other specialist, he has compassion and he knows people who have had to deal with it. But, we want to thrive. Nobody with Lyme disease wants to die. Do you know how many people die of Lyme disease? And if it's the disease that doesn't take them, what takes them is that they take their own lives because they can no longer handle it. They can no longer handle people not believing them. They can no longer handle the pain or the symptoms that they're dealing with. This is why I wanted to bring it to your attention. This is a disease that is important to know. It's as important to know as it is with cancer, diabetes, and a variety of other illnesses. But you know, a lot of illnesses can be tended to by healthy eating and herbs, but you gotta know what herbs to use. And I know a lot, I've got all my tinctures, so I gotta start them back up. And so I'm excited about that, but I'm grateful that God led me down this journey so that when multiple things started returning, I could say, that's what I gotta do. I'm not happy, but I am grateful and I am joyful that God took me on this journey, because what it has done, it has allowed me the knowledge that I need. But having this opportunity to take an additional course, I'm just so excited. And I want to be well so I can focus and finish on the early side of it so that I can see what else I can do to help others, not just with Lyme disease, with a variety of things, because there are things that I want to achieve in my life before God takes me home. Folks, I hope this was informative, and I'm not here to kind of like say, woe is me, because this is what I deal with. And I do have days that I feel fabulous. But when it comes in on this unexpectedly, you don't know what's going on, it's hard. But God reminded me, hey, so this article, as sad as it was, and I cried for a while, and it almost angers me because it shouldn't have come to that. But when you go out shopping and you see people acting weird, out of character for who they are, you know them from somewhere, and then you see how they're kind of like being really cranky and stuff, and you like, wow, what's wrong with them? They're kind of going off the deep end. You might not understand, but there could be something going on that you can't help. They might need a doctor, and they might not even realize they're behaving that way. And that was one thing I asked my physician at that time. I was so sick. I was just angry, and I was using foul language, and I told him, I said, it was at home. I said, why? What's wrong? And he goes, that's your Lyme disease, because your brain is processing things so differently. And that's not an excuse to use foul language, folks. You can't, because I was embarrassed. I would be at home, and my husband said, Laura, what's wrong with you? I don't know. And because I wasn't around people that swore, and well, in the past I have been, but things like that happen. And I like not swearing. I appreciate having a pure heart, as pure as a normal human being can have. But that's the point. I am human. I can have a disease. I can be ill. I can misbehave to culture standards. But you know what? I'm also human, filled with compassion and love for others and a desire to understand. But more importantly, I wanted you to understand a part of my journey so that you might have a little bit more compassion to those when you find out that somebody has Lyme disease and they've been seeing a doctor for it. Because most of us, we don't want to tell you, because most people don't care. And the last thing we want to do is share with you something that you will kind of like, yeah, whatever. And some of you still might, and that's okay, because I'm used to that. But I am very grateful that my husband understands. And so I'm going to end this here. I don't know how long I've talked, and I do apologize that this may have gone a little longer than I wanted. I just wanted to come on and inform. The t-shirt I'm wearing is my Lyme shirt. I'm going to try to change the camera a little bit. And this is my Hope shirt that I asked my daughter to make. And I don't know if you can see, but in the H loop, you see that, the loop there? It says Lyme Warrior. and I designed this shirt, and I asked my daughter, oops, I got that crooked. I asked my daughter to make me a shirt. I got her some shirts. I got a gray one and this one, and I asked her to make me a shirt. Can she make this for you if you are a Lyme patient? Yes, and I will put her link below, and possibly if I can get an Etsy site linked up here, I'll do that too. But she created this for me. I asked her to, and it's my way of being able to say, I'm a warrior and I will stand strong. Friends, I hope that you have been blessed with this information and you move forward believing in you and also having compassion for people that you might not understand their journey. Have a wonderful day. May your smile be warm and inviting. God bless you.